Our basic rotation would start with a year of red clover, which is a legume, fixes nitrogen, is a good cover crop, improves the soil structure. And the next year we would plow that down and plant corn. A lot of that nitrogen is released when it's plowed down, and corn is a really good user of nitrogen. So we use a polenta type corn at the flour mill. But I would say out of my total corn crop, about 25% goes to the flour mill and the rest goes to a local dairy farm guy down the road. After the corn, we plant oats, which isn't, corn is a strong carrier of fusarium, which causes vomitoxin. Oats is not, so when we started, we were planting spring wheat after corn. I learned that was a big mistake because of the host. So we would plant oats, and then after the oats, plant our winter wheat crop, which would go to the flour mill. Oats doesn't tend to carry the same diseases as the wheat, so that's a good following crop. After the wheat, we take the wheat off and we plant a forage turnip, which acts as a disease break crop for the wheat, and it also, when it breaks down in the soil, is a biofumigant. So a lot of the soil-borne pathogens in the wheat will be killed as the forage turnip breaks down in the fall. The next spring, we would plant buckwheat, which we also use at the mill. Buckwheat does not host any diseases of any of the grasses that we grow. So that whole year there is a complete disease break crop. Buckwheat is also a great weed control crop because it grows fast and can smother perennial weeds. So that sort of has a dual function. We take the buckwheat off in the fall, and then we use a no-till planter and plant rye, which we also use a lot of. That's a winter grain. The rye grows through the fall. We frost seed clover into the rye in the next spring, and then take the rye off and we're back to the beginning with the red clover. So that's our basic rotation. So we have a lot of different plant species in there. We juggle planting times to keep the weeds off balance and keep the diseases off balance. So so far it's working pretty good. I tweak it a lot because that's, for me, crop rotation is one of these things that I just absolutely fascinated with. I think a good reason to bring small grains into a rotation is guys that get caught up in the corn-soybean cycle, small grains have completely different types of root systems than these crops. They can act as a disease break crop for them. They tend to improve soil structure more than either corn or soybeans. I think that they're also usually planted at, I'm thinking about it, different times of the year than either corn and soybeans. The big problem with the corn and soybean rotation is they're both planted at the same exact time. So you start to build up these disease and weed pressures within that system where, if you're planting corn or soybeans in the middle of May, you're planting oats. Oats go in the beginning of April. So weeds that are going to grow then are going to be different than the weeds that grow during the corn and soybean cycle. If you're growing a winter grain, you're planting that in the fall, which is a totally different set of weeds than the corn and soybean cycle or the early spring one. So by using small grains and diversifying when you plant things, particularly in an organic system, you keep the weeds off balance. When you get into this cycle of planting the same thing, that's where your lamb's quarters and your pig weeds and these problem weeds in these corn and soybean rotations start really coming in. So I feel like it's absolutely essential to have small grains in my rotation, for soil health, for weed control, for disease prevention. Look at nature. Nature is diverse. Nature isn't a corn-soybean cycle. I try to put as many different species in my rotation as I can possibly fit in, and is getting all those different things in there easy? No. And do we do it every time? No. Because the weather windows are tough, but all my neighbors what the hell is he doing planting forage turnips? And then he plows them in. What's that about? I cannot even tell you. When we first started planting turnips, we had them right around my farm. All these people were stopping off at the farm what is that you got growing there? Everyone thinks I'm a freak. Another thing I think that has been a really important synergy with me as a farmer and growing food grade grains is to have the link up with the distilleries. They play an really important role in what we're doing to try to promote food grade grain in the Northeast, because it is pretty risky because of the weather problems. Sometimes the wheat does not make feed grade or food grade. So what's important about that is if the wheat does not make the food grade, there needs to be a market for it. And the distilleries can still use that grain if it's low protein. They like that. If you get a lot of rain at harvest and it's low falling numbers, they love that even more. So they work as this great counterbalance to take a lot of the risk out of what I'm doing. So I think my work with like Brooklyn Distilling and Brad Estabrook, I mean, that has been such a great partnership for me, because, you know, if I have something that doesn't have enough protein, that's the thing that he wants. And I have another good high-paying market for that.